Good morning and happy Sunday. Welcome to your early morning intuitive guidance. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum here with some words of wisdom to start your day off well. And we have some really good stuff today. So, excuse the outfit, my little worn off heart here. It is going to be 70 degrees today. So, I think it's garden time is called for. So, I'm dressed for the occasion. Good morning, Joe Neal. Glad you are here. Welcome, welcome. So I was pondering as I was staggering around this morning, getting ready, um, where we're at as community. Oh, I have to show you my grandma mug. Every grandma has to have a grandma mug. The morning that Scarlett was born, Derek disappeared at some point, and I'm like, well, I wonder where he went. And he showed back up with flowers from the gift shop for Lauren and a grandma mug for me. So, yes. So, we're taking it for a spin, the grandma mug. Anywho, um, I was just kind of assessing where are we at in our process as humanity right now? And you got several grand mugs. You are lucky. You are lucky. Yeah, I like this one. It's a little mug, so it will handle the I just need a sip of that times. Um, so the the answer I gave to that question of where are we at as humanity is that part of what we're shaking free from is the use of defensiveness as a viable option, as it were. And so then what popped into my head was taking the war out of our words, the art of powerful non defensive communication. So I opened to a section, and it is about types of defensiveness. And again, you've all heard my um, beliefs about when we try to pigeonhole things in humans and et cetera into types, it oftentimes doesn't serve us. It's limiting. However, in this case, I think it will be useful because we can then wrap our brains around, um, well, how am I doing on that front? And which ones of these do I use often? Good morning, Diane. Glad you are here. Welcome. Which ones of these do we use often? And which ones of these are we, I'm going to say painfully aware we use? And which ones are we using? And everybody around us sees that we use them and knows that we use them, but we're not seeing it. We're not seeing it. And in order to heal something, we need to have some sense that it's even there and operating, right? So at the end of this, I'm going to ask you if you would like me to do a little deeper dive over the next several days on these categories again to refresh us. And let me know if you think that would be a worthy endeavor. All right. So let us start with some tapping and some breath. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Setting the intention we're fully present, fully aware, fully ready to process this information. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I love it. There's two of you here, and it's telling me there's one. Breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Shaking off the night's sleep, listening to the snap, crackle, and pop in your neck. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Good morning, Nancy. Glad you are here. Welcome, welcome. So, Practical Rebels will just keep rolling in here. This will be good. And for those of you who have the book, you might want to dig it out, Taking the War Out of Our Words, Sharon Ellison. And give me a minute here. Let me just kind of discern. Yeah, feels like we need a little bit of an overview, and then we'll jump into the section I'm going to read today. So the overview is, this is a book that she really poured her heart and soul into writing. I believe, welcome to whomever else has popped on. Your name isn't rolling. Well, there's Barb. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. poured her heart and soul into writing this book, and I feel like it's such an astute observation of humanity and how humanity functions. And I don't care how long ago it was written, she really captures how we function. And this is an opportunity for all of us to again take a look at this particular part of the book and decide for ourselves, are we ready to do something, another step, another layer about this? So, for those of you who love to follow along with me, we're starting on page 20. So, kind of at the beginning of the book. And she's talking about power struggles and telling us the laundry list of things that happen in a power struggle. So, we'll begin there. So, let's take a breath. Let it go. Settling into learning mode, curiosity mode. When we engage in power struggles, we treat power as if it were an external object to fight over. Oh my God, does that sound familiar for our days and times? Become simultaneously bound to and alienated from the other person. Make winning our primary goal. Accelerate rather than reduce conflicts. Good morning, Mel. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. Focus on fears of scarcity and loss. Often try to avoid conflict and are left with unresolved feelings. How many of you would say, yes, I'm conflict avoidant? Many people agree with that. Good morning, Beth. Welcome. Glad you're here. I'm so glad a bunch of you are here. I feel like I really need this refresher. Hopefully you feel the same and we will continue. But again, I'll ask that question at the end. Often try to avoid conflict and are left with unresolved feelings. Yes, 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 yes. Engage in a process that becomes an addictive cycle. Does this sound like power struggles work out really well? Look on a national level. Look on an international level. It ain't working. Okay? So the next section is entitled Like Flies in a Jar. Deepak Chopra tells a story that paints a vivid picture of the situation in which I think we find ourselves. When flies are put in a jar and left there with the lid on for a certain amount of time, 95% of the flies will never leave the jar once the lid is removed. And if you think we're much more advanced than flies, the flies have come to accept the boundaries of the jar as their reality. Good morning, Carolyn. Glad you are here. Glad you are here. Yes, we all need this now. We all need this now. And we need to share it with others, please. It does not occur to the flies that another experience lies beyond the jar's confines. In a strikingly similar way, I believe we have lived in a power struggle jar for centuries. We are so locked into using defensive reactions that most of us can't even envision other ways to react, even to minor conflict, let alone to mistreatment. I'm seeing some progress already. The reaction of Minnesotans, I'm seeing progress in terms of how we manage this. We are capable of far better reactions than defensiveness. Okay. But she's saying we do this so regularly that we have developed whole sets of defensive behavioral patterns that are common across various cultural, racial, and sexual lines. Moshe Feldenkrais says, until you know what you do, you cannot choose to do otherwise. The following 3 chapters will present an array of our typical defensive reactions in order to provide an accurate understanding of them. While most of us can identify some of our own defensive reactions, we are often unaware of many of them. So what are you doing that everyone else can see and you yet can't? Even if we are aware, we may not fully understand the dynamics of the process we are using. Ironically, whatever our degrees of awareness, our defensiveness usually feels legitimate, even necessary. And if it feels legitimate and necessary, how motivated are we going to be to change it? Yep. Yet most of us have a very different view of other people's defensiveness. We are more likely to see them as being deliberately manipulative, even in cases where the people are completely unaware of what they are doing. It is vital to remember how often we all react automatically and sincerely believe our reactions are justified. Defensiveness is a complex, deep trap, and many of us cannot see our way out of it. The more skilled we become in recognizing and understanding how we defend ourselves, the more easily we will be able to escape the power struggle jar and move into a new realm in which we can communicate more effectively. So I'm going to keep reading a little more, but I hope this is kind of piquing your curiosity. Like, ooh, I wonder what those ways are, and I wonder which ones I typically default to, and I wonder why I'm not aware of some, and wonder. Have lots of wonder. This will be good for us. So, basic categories of defense. Defensive reactions fall into three well-known categories: fight, flight, and surrender. Surrender, also known as freeze. Fight, flight, and freeze. Okay. These reactions have been adapted to psychology from a military context. And note this part, this is the important part. In the order of the warrior's preference. According to the rules of warfare, if we think we have the strength to win, we should dig in and fight. If we don't think we can win, we should run like hell. Only if we can neither win nor escape would we sometimes choose to surrender as an alternative to death. So that surrender is our least favorite choice because of the warrior mentality that we have. And if you think the United States is not a warrior nation, do a survey, take a look, okay? Thus, these three defensive maneuvers are commonly seen as progressing on a continuum from passive surrender to aggressive fight. I have observed that each of these categories, surrender, flight, fight, actually contains both a passive approach, undertaken primarily for self-protection, and an aggressive approach, undertaken for retaliation as well as self-protection. Is this beginning to make some sense as you're trying to process what's going on in our world? Hopefully this is beginning to make some sense. Ultimately, then, we have 6 modes of defensive reaction in which we can engage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the end of this paragraph, or this part of this chapter, and then I'm going to read to you the 6 modes, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So, defensive modes as personality types. Most of us use all 6 defensive modes at various times, or perhaps use different ones with different people. We may have a favorite one we use most often, or one we fall back on when all else fails. Our preferred defensive style is often such an integral part of our interaction with others that it is seen by those around us and even ourselves as our personality, a significant part of our identity. Each of the 6 defensive modes, therefore, corresponds to a common label that describes a certain personality type. Having particular defensive reactions as part of our perceived identity can make it harder for us to give them up. As Scott, a workshop participant, said, "If I stop being defensive, I won't have any personality at all." Holy cow, right? Think about that. If you feel like you're going to lose yourself by letting go of your defensive maneuvering, you're not going to let go of it. My friends won't know who I am. Many of us have legitimate reasons for fearing to give up our defensiveness. Lena Horne has described how she first wrapped isolation around herself as the defense she felt necessary to her survival. For her, like so many of us, the defensiveness was the best way she found to protect herself. This great singer eloquently describes her own later healing process and how people were amazed by the sound of her voice, her spontaneity, and her passion. They did not realize, she said, that for the first time they were seeing and hearing the whole Lena Horne. As we become less defensive, rather than losing our personality, we can be more open, free, and spontaneous. So there's the gift in being willing to look at this and let go of these defensive maneuverings. And again, a lot of it's at a subconscious level. So we're not even really aware we do this. All right. So now I'm going to run through the 6 types and see if you can pick out what you typically do. And then, for shits and giggles, see if you can pick out what the people closest to you do. And do not be surprised if it's harder for you to figure out your own than it is for you to figure out other people's. So we're going to do them in the reverse order. So the ones we least like to rely on, the surrender ones, moving through the withdraw ones, and then to the counterattack ones. So it's freeze, flight, and fight in that order. Okay, so 6 defensive reactions. Under the surrender type, you have the one where you step back and the one where you come forward. So the stepping back is the passive one, and the coming forward is the aggressive one. So the first one is surrender, betray, and that's the codependent personality type. Giving in to someone who treats you poorly, blaming yourself, and making excuses for the other person. Codependent. The aggressive one is surrender, sabotage, and that's the passive aggressive personality type. Pretending to agree with someone who you think is treating you poorly and then doing something to undermine that person. Sure, yeah, we can do that. I'm not doing that. Okay, so those are your 2 surrender types, betray and sabotage. The withdraw, the run like hell one, withdraw, escape. That's a passive personality type. Avoid talking about something you don't want to discuss in order to avoid conflict. How many of us chime with that one? And then withdraw and trap, and that is the vindictive personality type. Refusing to respond to someone in order to draw that person into a situation where he or she may feel uncomfortable or act inappropriately. So that could be silent treatment, it could be all kinds of stuff. Okay, so those are your withdraw or run like hell ones. Now, the counterattack, the aggressive ones, the fight ones. Counterattack, justify. That's the defensive personality type. Responding to criticism by explaining your own behavior or making excuses. And then the counterattack, blame. Aggressive personality type. Attacking the other person's position in an attempt to defend yourself. So that can be the blaming the other person. Well, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have had to hit you, yell at you, embarrass you, whatever it was. Okay. So those are our 6 defensive reaction types. So my question for all of you is, would you be interested in, would it be helpful to, again, do those 3 chapters, to revisit those 3 chapters, to refresh ourselves on which of these am I using? Yes, it can be helpful to understand the ones the others are using. And I will say one piece that I think is good to take away today is understanding that for the most part, it's probably subconscious on their part. So feeling like they're being manipulative on purpose usually stirs our anger and resentment. If we feel like they're being manipulative subconsciously as a defense to protect themselves, we have different options then, don't we? We can look at what is threatening them so much. Is there something I'm saying or something I'm doing that they're feeling threatened by? Is there a way to modify how we're engaging about this? You can go into some problem solving then. Okay. But let me know in the feed here, and I'll follow up after the fact. Would it be helpful for us to revisit those 3 chapters over the course of the next several early morning intuitive guidances? It might take us a week to get through them, but would it be helpful for us to revisit this stuff? Let me know. But hopefully you got something useful out of this today. For me, the takeaway is Oh, yeah, it is easier to see it in other people than oftentimes it is to see it in ourselves. So, before I start my journaling today, I'm going to revisit those 6 and see what I can pick out in terms of what's lurking. What's lurking. So, for Barb, she's saying it's always helpful doing the review. So, the rest of you, let me know what you think. Would it be helpful? Would you like some of that revisited? So, have an awesome Sunday. I'm going to do some gardening today if it stops raining. We're supposed to get to 70 degrees. My goodness. I think that's like 20 some degrees above average. What does that portend for August? E. Have an awesome Sunday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you are capable of far more than you think you are, including exploring your defensive maneuvering. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.